Welcome back to the channel. So when you are deciding the date that you want to retire, you would think, what difference does it make if I retire one day later, right? Well, actually, it could very well be that if you retire one day later, you may have cost yourself thousands of dollars. Let me explain how. There's something that I call no man's land, and that applies whether you're in the FERS retirement system or the CSRS retirement system. Let me start with the FERS retirement system because it's a little bit easier to explain. The way the FERS pension works is the FERS pension commences the month after you are deemed retired. Now the key word is deemed retired. And who does the deeming? Do you deem yourself retired? Well, very nice what you deem yourself, but guess what? You're not deemed retired until OPM deems you retired. And OPM's rules are, if you work any day of a given month, you are not deemed retired for that month. So let's give an example. Imagine somebody, their last day of work is April 1st, the first day of April. They have their final day, they come into the office, there's a goodbye party, there's cakes, there's speeches, they sign off on their final papers, they hand in their badge, they hand in their laptops, and that was April 1st. April 2nd, this person is off on vacation, and they send a postcard to everybody in the office. Ask the people in that office, is that person retired? And they'll say, yeah, of course he's retired. Ask OPM if that person's retired, and they'll say, nope, they are not retired for the month of April because they were still working April 1st. So because they weren't considered, they weren't deemed retired for the month of April, well, they're going to be deemed retired the next month, the month of May. And the pension for the month of May will be paid in June. At the beginning of June, they will get a pension check for the month of May. But what about a pension check for the month of April? Are they going to get a pension check for the month of April? No, they will not. Even though they were retired for pretty much the entire month, except for that one day, they're not going to get a retirement check for the month of April? Nope, they're not going to get a retirement check for the month of April. So it turns out that the month of April just passed by, and they're not going to get any retirement compensation. And guess what? They weren't working, so they're not getting any work compensation. You're not at work, you're not retired. You're in what I call no man's land. Now let's understand the value of no man's land. If a person just lost a month of pension compensation, so what is the value of 1 month of pension compensation? Obviously it's going to vary from person to person. There are some people, their pensions are substantial. They're making $3,000 a month, $4,000 a month of a pension check. And they just lost that because they decided to work that one extra day, the very first day of the month. In order to avoid no man's land, or at least minimize no man's land, you should aim to retire at the end of the month. FERS employees, in order for you to avoid or minimize no man's land, you should aim to retire as close to the end of the month as possible. Does it have to literally be the very last day of the month? No, it doesn't have to be. But just understand, the closer to the end of the month that you retire, you will have shrunk and you will minimize no man's land. But the earlier in the month that you retire, you will have increased no man's land. So if you want to decrease no man's land and you want to minimize the amount of money you're losing by retiring in the middle of the month, you should aim to retire at the end of the month. That minimizes no man's land and minimizes your loss. As I mentioned, that's for the FERS retirees. However, CSRS, you have a very similar rule. You should aim to retire at the end of the month. However, OPM allows a CSRS employee to work the first day of the next month, and the second day, and the third day, and still be deemed retired for that month. So in the example I gave before, somebody who retires April 1st, if they are a FERS employee, they will not be deemed retired for the month of April. They will be deemed retired in May. Their pension will start in June, and the June pension will only be compensation for the month of May. If you are a CSRS retiree, if you retire April 1st, or even April 2nd, or even April 3rd, you will be deemed retired in April, and your pension will start in the month of May. Now, just a side note on the CSRS people, is there a difference in the pension check that you receive at the beginning of the month of May if you retire April 1st, 2nd, or 3rd? does the first 3 days of the month make a difference in the pension check as opposed to, let's say you retired at the end of the previous month, at the end of March, for example? And the answer would be yes, there is a difference. The difference is that if you worked the first or the second or the third day of April, yes, you'll be deemed retired for the month of April, but you weren't retired for the entire month of April. As a result of that, the check that you receive at the beginning of May will not be a check for the entire month of April. We have to prorate it to reflect the fact that you weren't retired for the entire month of April. You worked either the first, second, or third day. So just keep that in mind, CSRS people, that you should aim to retire at the end of the month, just like a FERS person, but you also have the wiggle room that you could retire the first, second, and third day of the next month and still be deemed retired for that month. If you retire on the fourth day of the month, however, you are in no man's land, even CSRS. So let's summarize. CSRS, you could aim to retire at the end of the month or the first, second, or third day of the next month and still be deemed retired for that month. If, however, you retire any time between the 4th of the month and the end of that month, you will not be deemed retired that month. You'll be deemed retired at the beginning of the next month. FERS people, you should aim to retire at the end of the month. And this way, starting the next month, you'll be deemed retired the next month. So in the example I gave before, instead of retiring April 1st, if you retire at the end of April, you will be deemed retired in May, and your pension check will start in June, and you will have lost no money. You will not have entered no man's land. Thanks for following. Don't forget to stay tuned to the channel, and if you like this video, please share and subscribe.